All right, this is Shmoozing with Avi. Welcome, Eitan Adler. Okay, so we're gonna do a slightly structured. This is part 3 of 3. It was gonna be part 3 or 4. Unfortunately, I couldn't get fourth person to join. So far, the way I've structured this podcast or this series of the podcast is that I've done part 1 with the Shana Bet, part 2 with Shana Aleph, and now part 3 with the Holy Rav Eitan, who is a Madrich in Reishit Yerushalayim. And so he's actually been my Madrich for the past 2 years. And now he doesn't like to call himself my friend, but he's up there.
No, we're good friends.
We're good friends. Oh,
Good
it's
friends.
very cute. It's very cute. But yeah, he has dramatically shaped my years, like my time as a yeshiva bocha, like completely from stage 1 of Shana Aleph all the way to where I am today. He's guided me there the whole time, so it's a huge honor to actually have him on here. It's very kind of you to agree to coming on here. And yeah, so we're gonna start off a little bit just giving an introduction of who Eitan is. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, you know? Tell us, you don't have to delve deep, just give where you came from, like where you went to yeshiva. I mean, big spoiler if you went to Reishit, but okay. And then just how you got to being here as a Madrich.
Alright, so I live in Springfield, New Jersey, not Massachusetts, not where the Simpsons come from.
That was the first thing I had when you said Springfield. I was like, he's from the Simpsons.
That's what most people think.
Like everyone there,
I do
like
not
bright
live in
yellow.
the same town as a little bright little yellow people.
With Apu.
Yeah, I never actually watched the show. So.
Oh, okay. Eitan isn't involved in culture unless it's Spider-Man, in which case he's holding.
That one's not anymore. Anyways, so live in Springfield. Went to JEC for high school in Elizabeth. Then I came here to Reishit for yeshiva. Went back to America at Lander College for.
Wait, so how long were you in Reishit for?
I was in Reishit for 2 years, Shana Aleph and Shana Bet, 2014, 15.
So do you want to talk about like why you actually went to Reishit? We can.
However you want to
Okay.
decide.
Okay, so I'm still learning the podcasting route. I want to apologize for all the ums and ahs and pauses. We're getting the hang of it a little bit. I was listening back to my voice with Eitan just now. I was going to say I apologize for everyone who has to hear my voice. I'm sincerely sorry.
Relax. You just don't like listening to your own voice. You're listening to someone else's.
Yeah.
I can't stand my own voice over recording either.
I can't stand it in person, so.
I
joking.
can tell. That's why we've had so many hours
Yeah.
of conversation.
Honestly, you don't understand. Like, trying to count up the hours that I probably spent more time talking to Eitan than I have like anyone else like in yeshiva at all. Like there must have been, like if we could count up the hours, it must be like a very significant portion of your time. Like this is why I feel
Quite
so
a
bad.
lot of
We're gonna go like and delve into like what actually entails of being a madrich. But like he spends literally
Let's do it.
his time just like delving into like everyone else's problems. Like you spend so like being a madrich here, you're sacrificing so much. Yes, you're getting some benefits of like having everything paid for and
I get to see you guys come out like
Oh.
this, and that's all I need.
too kind.
That's really true.
But like realistically, you're sacrificing so much of your own time and just you're dealing like Eitan barely sleeps at night. He literally like the amount of times I've spoken with him until like 3 a.m. Like I remember like my first 2 weeks of yeshiva, I was up with Eitan at least like twice in those first 2 weeks of yeshiva, like until 3 a.m. just schmoozing about life. Like that's the essence of what I feel like spoiler, but it's
the gun.
but hold on, we're gonna pull it back a little bit. We're gonna go back. I'm getting very into the idea of the Madrich. But yeah, so we were saying Eitan was in Reishit for 2 years.
I was in Reishit for 2 years.
And so why Dafka did you come to Reishit? What was the pull for Reishit?
Part of it was growing up in Springfield. I already knew the Rabbi Marcus's family.
So
The fourth Marcus brother, right? Reishit is run by Rav J, who's the head, and then his 3 sons. One of them is Rosh Yeshiva, one of them is the Mashgiach, one of them, I think his title is Dean of Student Life or something like that. Basically the Menahel. And then the fourth brother that everybody forgets about is the Rav of Maishal back in Springfield. So I knew the family very well already. So that was a large part of why I came specifically to Reishit. I felt very comfortable with them.
Do you feel like you were a usual Reishit boy, or?
Not quite. At the time, Reishit was getting a little bit of a different crowd of guys than they have been over the last few years. But there are guys over the last few years.
So what would you say at the time of your Shana Aleph? What would you say the type of guy to come to Reishit was? You can be very open, be very frank here. I assume no one's actually listened to this podcast, but I'm saying because this is what we're trying to delve into this. We're trying to delve who actually comes to yeshiva, what kind of guys, and like it does change over time, but like we'll grasp me different kind of people, can't they?
Well, coming to Reishit over the last few years, the guys coming have been a little bit calmer, I'll say, is one of the key changes.
Mm-hmm.
Guys used to be a lot crazier in terms of everything.
What does that mean? In terms
Drinking, what they did back in high school, not just in a religious sense, just personality-wise, a lot more extreme, a lot crazier, all over the place. Guys now, they're not necessarily more religious, although some of them are coming in. Right, Ethan Aaron, Ethan Fromm, guys like that.
Giving all the shout outs already. Well, we like on this podcast, we like to give a couple of people shout outs every so often. Yeah, you get a limited amount, so you'll be careful, use them wisely.
Hey, you didn't tell me that before.
Hey, listen, we'll drop things on this podcast.
Anyways, but when I came in, so Reishit, guys are coming in a little more religious, but that's not the biggest difference. The biggest difference is just, I guess, how crazy personality-wise guys are.
Why do you think Reishit was bringing those types of guys in your time?
Those are the guys that were applying. Different guys are applying these days.
Do you think Reishit's Mahalach has changed over the couple of years since you were here?
Certainly. The Mahalach changed a little, the staff has changed.
What do you think was like a causing factor of that?
The guys coming, you changed the Mahalach to...
Yeah. So do you think was it an external factor or internal?
It's like this, the basic Mahalach is still the same. The way they implement it and the way they try and get the message across, in some ways is the same, in some ways it's changed. You have to do whatever it takes to reach the guys. The guys are always different because people are always different. So you're always going to have to. It's a very deep idea. It actually is, and there was a lot of Torah behind that.
By the way, feel free to quote Torah here. This is very much a Torah podcast.
Okay.
We thoroughly encourage it.
Yeah, but I'm not going to start giving a whole share about that idea now.
Chavod. This will be a 2.5 hour share, guys. Just get ready. Buckle up.
So you have to tailor your approach to what will be successful for the guys. If that means, let's say, just some very basic things that could mean right now. More Gemara, less Gemara, more intense level shiurim, or more schmoozing with the guys and chilling until halfway through the year when they're finally ready to open up a Gemara.
So I was going to say, what do you think the ikka coming in for most guys is? Do you think Gemara is that ikka? Do you think Mahalach, do you think it's keeping Shabbos? What do you think is like
the most important thing for guys to take coming out? Or they're looking for.
What do you think? What do you think Reishit is looking to give over?
Reishit is looking to give over. This is my own personal feelings about what they are trying to do. If you ask the Rosh Yeshiva, you might get a different answer. But this is my understanding of it. is that Reishit is trying to give over to guys a seriousness of Judaism, a way to relate to Judaism and the Torah that they were not necessarily given in high school for whatever reason. And this way they can live Judaism with a passion and keeping halacha seriously for the rest of their lives, continuing to grow. Part of that, maybe the most necessary part, is continued learning. It's really quite impossible to sustain continued growth as a Jew without some form of learning as a part of your life. So the Reishit, what they try and do is, in addition to growing as a person, they try and get everyone that learning should be a part of their life long term, even post Reishit. If that just means Shnei Mikra Targum, then that's all it means. If it could be more, if it could be Gemara, learning on a serious level with a chavrusa or in a yeshiva, then it's that. But whatever that's usually the key to keeping whatever guys get in Reishit, in yeshiva in general, not just Reishit. This is a known idea in Kiruv, that without learning, nothing lasts. Because I'll make this idea very clear. So that's, if there's any one specific focus in Reishit, it's that. If you had to narrow it down, but it's a broad goal of trying to help guys come in touch with Judaism and appreciate what that means and live a Torah lifestyle.
So how do you think you as a, we're going to jump back to it, because if I haven't already said, you are a Madrich of Reishit.
I am.
So by the way, I apologize if people are going to hear shouting in the background, just part of the scenery in Reishit. So as the Madrich, how do you think Reishit utilizes you to help the Talmud in here?
Well, there's my official job description and there's my unofficial job description.
I feel like you aren't the typical Madrich, but you are the goal of what Madrichim should be. And you can accept that as it is a good thing.
That could be. That could be. The official job description of the Madrich is, we were never really given an official job description, but it's kind of something along these lines. Wake the guys up in the morning for Shachris, learn with them at night, be around the dorms at night, making sure guys are not going crazy, that nobody's sneaking alcohol in or anything of the sort. Going on the trips with the guys, helping run Shabbos, and in case anyone has to go to Terem, the local
hospital,
emergency room kind of thing. There's no real English American equivalent of Terem, so if you know what Terem is, great. If not, come to Israel.
There's nothing quite like it, honestly.
There really isn't. So if you have to take a guy a guy has to go to Terem, then Madrich goes with him also. Partially just for the emotional, moral support, partially for the Hebrew speaking, because most Reishit guys cannot speak a word of Hebrew.
Yeah, we are in Beit Shemesh, and we are in an American yeshiva, so we literally do not pick up a word of Hebrew. You go to the makolet, you say, Slicha kama zalet? Oh, it's 50 shekel. There's no way to really pick up Hebrew, so is that like a requirement of a Madrich that you have to speak Hebrew?
It's not a requirement, but it's something that they certainly like. It happens to be most Madrichim, unless they're trying to get more guys.
Wow, shots fired. Shots fired.
I'm not thinking of anyone specifically. No.
Yeah, because how many Shana Gimel do we know? Well, Shana Gimel in general, you're not, especially if you're coming out of Reishit, you're not going to know Hebrew. It's something you pick up over time.
Yeah. So it happens to be most Madrichim they get, generally speaking, know some Hebrew. I know more than some, less than others. But I know enough to get by, for example, and terem.
Yeah. All the lingo there.
Well, they also speak English, but
Once again, we are in Beis Shemesh. Is how it is.
So that's basically the official job description of the Madrich. The unofficial job description, and the way I guess Reishit utilizes me, to get back to that question, is to have me around learning. I'm around most of the day, at least the last 2 years. This year a little bit less. Around most of the day, learning with guys, answering their questions, schmoozing with them, meaning I'm not just the guy in the dorms, there to take away alcohol that they're sneaking in or report, if they're going crazy at 3 in the morning.
Which is that like something that you have to do often? We'll go back to utilizing, like, how you utilize yourself and help guys, but like one thing I did want to deal with is that, like, how do you find dealing with the kids when they do actually break the rules? How do you do it in a way that's helpful for them, but also I feel like it very much depends on the kid also, I assume.
It depends on the kid, it depends on the situation and what they're doing.
Like, do you do it in a way that it's you decide to chinuch them, or like you have to, that chinuching is getting them in trouble?
It depends. It depends. There are a few things to consider. One of them is the fact that I am an employee of the yeshiva, and if I'm getting paid to do something, then halachically I'm obligated to do it. If I don't, it's called stealing. So that is one factor to keep in mind. If my job obligates me to, let's say, report to the heads that this kid came back at 3 in the morning, plastered instead of at 1 in the morning, which doesn't usually happen.
So if they come back 1 in the morning plastered, it's okay. It's 3 in the morning.
It's not as bad if they come back 1 in the morning. Curfew's
okay.
1 in the morning, so if they come back, it's bad, but it's not as bad.
Yeah.
But so then I have to report that. So I am given some leeway in determining what to report, what not to report, depending a little bit on how, let's say, public it was. If everybody knows about it, I have a little bit less leeway because that's something everybody knows about anyways. So I have to get the facts as they are, not distorted by a bunch of 18-year-olds that don't want to get their friends in trouble or are excited by whatever it was that was going on, to the heads, so they know what to do. If it's more private, nobody knows about it, then I'm given some more leeway. It also depends on how serious it is. If it's just a kid, he's a good kid and he has 1 beer, that's not such a big deal.
Catch off done, you hear that?
If it's a kid that's on probation, for whatever reason, and now I catch him sneaking off campus, that's a much bigger deal. So it also depends on what it is. It depends on my relationship with the kid also. If I'm much closer with the kid, there's 100, Shana Aleph kids, and this year there's 55 Shana Bet kids currently. I'm not close with everyone. I would love to be, I just can't be. I don't have enough time in the day.
He's literally split between 50 things and just has no time.
So if it's someone that I have a kasher with, then there's a bigger chance that I could deal with it myself. I speak to him, sit him down, listen, you can't do this again. This is wrong for X, Y, and Z reasons. It's breaking yeshiva rules,
Do you see, how are you going to strike that balance between then chinuch and actual discipline? You can say you find they're very similar things, but where do you draw the balance between which derech you go to then, even if it is someone who you're close to?
Well, discipline is a part of chinuch. Chinuch doesn't mean just sitting down and showing them what's right.
Can you explain? Because what exactly does chinuch mean? What do you say?
Chinuch is helping raise someone in a way that they could be true to themselves while following the Torah path. Meaning each individual, like I mentioned earlier,
That's what you think.
each individual is different, and each individual has their own unique way of connecting to the Torah.
So how do you translate chinuch?
There's no good English equivalent.
It's not like education or like
it's
how would you?
It's so much more than education.
Yeah.
It's not just teaching material. It's bringing a person into touch with who they are and how they connect to the Torah and live a real relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and in a way that will be lasting, in a way that will set them up for the rest of their life. Chanoch lanar al pi darko, gam ki yazkin lo yasor mimenu, something like that. It's a pasuk in Mishlei. If you, right, this is where the word chinuch comes from, this pasuk.
Yeah.
When you raise a kid according to his path, right, that's the part of the pasuk everyone quotes, right, when you have to raise each person what's right for them. But the second half of the pasuk is even when he gets old, he's not going to turn away from it because he's in touch with what's right for him, his own unique way of connecting to the Torah.
So can you understand then we've still got to go back to how you utilize yourself, so just remind me that's the we'll get back to it, but now that we've gone down this route of you're giving them a certain, I think how you chinuch them is that's giving your ideas over to them. So how, like
it's not giving over my ideas. It's helping them figure out their ideas.
So that's why I wanted. So how do you strike the balance? Because you hear the term brainwashing so often in regards to yeshiva. This is like we've dealt with it in the past 2 episodes. How people like perceive going into yeshiva and they see them going in as A and coming out as B, and they always say, "Oh, look at him. His brainwashed by the rabbis." So help me understand how chinuch isn't. I mean, maybe it is. Like give some background and help us understand how it's like that. That isn't what chinuch is. Chinuch isn't everyone. They tell you this is right. This is the only way possible, or maybe it is. So what's give the? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
So it's like this. The Western culture, America specifically, but Western culture in general, trains people to not think. Go through life not thinking, responding to stimuli, especially in a way that makes the provider of that stimuli richer. Right, all of advertisements, everything, all of Hollywood is all everything is directed towards making more money off of you at your expense. The way to do that is Coca-Cola, exactly, everything. The way they do that is by targeting, by brainwashing you with ideas. Brainwashing,
and
basically.
They use the I apologize for the word, but like sex cells. That's like that's the classic advertising terminology.
Exactly.
So that within itself is like the classic brainwashing.
Correct. They're targeting. People are composed of their physical side with their physical desires, and to ignore that's just ignoring half of who you are. And then you're also composed of a neshama, your soul, which grants you the capacity to think higher than an animal. Right? You're above. You're not an animal. You're more than that because you have a neshama. That's your thinking, who you are. That's who you are, and that's expressed by speech. That's why Rashi in this week's parsha says the Targum Onkelos, right? V'yipach ba'apav nishmas chayim. Targum Onkelos, right? V'yipach ba'apav nishmas chayim, and God blew into Adam a spirit of life. Targum Onkelos famously translates that into l'ruach memalala, a speaking spirit. Rashi there doesn't say that speech is what qualifies man as man. He says it's the capacity to think, right? Speech is just an expression of your thoughts and a way to communicate them to someone else. But what makes man man is his ability to think. Western culture is targeting the animalistic side of people to try and make money. Exactly, sex sells. And that's so people grow up 18 years never having thought seriously in their lives. Some of them not even realizing that that they're capable of it. That's brainwashing. Brainwashing is not giving you the ability to come to your own conclusions and think for yourself. What yeshiva in general does, and specifically Reishit.
Well, I forgot to say that we have a no phone policy in this podcast, but clearly someone doesn't listen.
I thought it was actually on silent.
Or we forgive you this time.
What yeshiva in general does, and Reishit specifically, is it exposes people to ideas that they never heard, number one. Number two, and allows them to interpret it in a way that makes sense to them. I'll try and get back to that more in a second. And it teaches them that they're able to think for the first time in their life. Kids here aren't brainwashed. Kids come in brainwashed, and now they're exposed to ideas that they never heard before, and they're given the ability and the time to think for themselves and to think about those ideas, accept the ones that they think are true, reject the ones that they think are false, toy with them, come to understand them in their own unique way. Everyone understands everything slightly differently, because everyone is unique and perceives the world slightly differently. So what yeshiva does, and the more successful the yeshiva is if it does this more, is it gives kids the chance to think on their own and process ideas that they were never exposed to, and come to terms with those ideas, in their own way. One of the Rebbeim here in Reishit, Rabbenovitz, once said that the most important moments in yeshiva are not the moments where a kid is sitting talking with a Rebbe, or sitting in front of a Gemara, or listening to a Musar Shmouz. The most important moments in yeshiva are when he's standing. We have a beautiful porch outside our base Madrich. When he's standing on the porch looking out at Beit Shemesh and thinking. When he's thinking, it doesn't matter what he's thinking about, because if he's thinking, that means he's using his brain, he's coming to figure himself out on his own. He's not being told who he is and what he should think and what he should believe and what he should do and what's good and what's bad. He's thinking on his own, he's coming to his own conclusions. And if he's doing that, then that means he's going to do that about the most important things in life also. What's really good and bad? Is good chasing money and becoming a billionaire, or is it developing a relationship with God? Right? That one doesn't necessarily preclude the other, but they're two different goals.
You don't think they can coincide at all?
No, they can. One doesn't mean you can't do the other. There are a lot of very religious, very frum, very righteous, wealthy people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not one of them, but there are plenty.
What do you mean, on the Reishit budget that they're giving you?
Oh yeah.
The Reishit payroll is good. It's good stuff. There's a reason you see him driving around in a Lambo.
No one working in Reishit, I can't speak about other yeshivas, although I would imagine it's the same. No one working in Reishit is doing it for the money.
So, just funny that you brought this topic up, because there is a very common thing that I've heard, especially from the Shana Aleph coming in. The only reason they want us here is for our tuition and for our payment.
Okay.
Give your thoughts on that, please. It'd be very appreciated.
So, I don't have the exact numbers, and even if I did, I don't think I'd be allowed to share them.
Mm-hmm.
But tuition covers only a fraction of Reishit's expenses, and this is true with every yeshiva around the world.
This is something I want to highlight. It's very much tuition's
with every
very much covered
yeshiva around the world. I happen to know this personally with Reishit because I've been somewhat involved with the yeshiva over the last few years, and I've heard a lot of things and hanging out in the office and with the people who run the place.
He knows some knowledge. He's got some inside knowledge.
But this is true with every yeshiva around the world. Tuition only covers a fraction of the expenses. Some yeshivas it covers more, some yeshivas it covers less.
But like for example, sorry to interrupt, but we were having a discussion, just Shana Aleph alone, like which is the top 2 floors. We were trying to work out, and there's a lot more. There's like 3 floors. I'm not sure how many rooms do you reckon are in the dorms.
There are
two,
12 rooms per floor, so it's 24 rooms.
That's 6 there.
24 Shana Aleph rooms.
So within 24 Shana Aleph rooms.
Forget Shana Bet. Reishit uses money on Shana Bet.
Yeah, Shana Bet was a whole different. We were talking about Rabbi Benovitz before. He gives a schmooze on trying to encourage people to come back for Shana Bet, and his one thing is, I can guarantee we don't make money on you coming back. We lose so much on. There's so much expense, but they were just trying to work out just on those 24 rooms alone of the Shana Aleph, that just for the mazgan, the air conditioning being on, because realistically most kids leave it on 24/7, and no one. We have a nice notice by the door saying, please turn off the lights, please turn off the air conditioning when you leave. No one does it. It's not the way of people to do it, because everyone likes to come back to a nice cold room in Beit Shemesh, House of the Sun, it's hot. So we were doing the maths, and it roughly works out to be $100,000. That's just on air conditioning. This is for like the 9 months or so that people are in yeshiva. So I didn't do the maths personally. I was listening in on the conversation, and people with a much clearer mindset than me understood and did all the maths for me, and they said it was roughly around $100,000 just for those 24 rooms. So put that in perspective, like that's just for that. Think of the food. Think of the tiolim. Think of all of these things that, like paying the Rebbe salaries, which literally most Rebbeim here have at least 2 jobs. Like they're not just surviving on other than the main.
Every Rebbe here either is supported by their parents or in-laws, or has a second job. There's no staff here that this is their only source of income.
Is that because
And that's true. Again, that's true with just about every yeshiva.
So people aren't coming here to make. Rebbe's aren't looking to recruit you because they're making money off you. Like that's not their job. Isn't how much. Even with recruiters, I don't think they get if you get this amount, you get paid this much.
They don't get a commission.
The whole thing is that they're here mostly out like the goodness of their heart, because they want to make a difference in people's lives. So they get to do that, and Baruch Hashem, they're able to get paid some money towards doing that. But that's not the reason why they're doing it. They're doing it because they're making a difference. There's like this stigma that you just want us for your money. Like understand, like you're taking away, like that's a Western civilization, is that like everything you're doing is for the sake of building money. Just going off what you were saying, like everything's doing, so people come in assuming they just want us for their money. So, and that's why the whole concept of brainwashing seems so much more applicable if you go in by the knowledge that brainwashing equals them making more money. If you take that out, you're already understanding there's much less of a need to brainwash, because it's not. No one's benefiting out of you becoming more or doing certain things. It's simply they get this, and you do your own thing, sort of.
Even with all the tuition, there's still a nice sized deficit at the end of the year that's only covered by donors. Some of that is alumni who are now making money and are thankful to yeshiva that helped change their life. Some of it are Jews with right priorities, and they realize that the right thing to do with their money is help spread Torah. So whoever the donor is, it's true with Reishit. It's true with every yeshiva, but I can testify that it's personal experience. It's true with Reishit. Tuition doesn't cover all of Reishit's costs. It just doesn't. So there's no money to be made in having kids come here.
Also speak about scholarships, like how many.
Yeah. Again, I don't know the specific numbers. There are kids that come here for free because they can't afford it. Reishit doesn't discriminate based off of money. They charge basically what can be afforded. They don't turn people away because they don't have money.
Like I know from
I know people that have come here literally for free.
Yeah, there's a certain guy who every single year he sets out to pay, I think, one or two kids tuition, just something he always does.
There are alumni that are, thank God they're well off, and out of thanks to the yeshiva.
So why can we say those people, like how do we know those people aren't just brainwashed? Like to maybe that's Reishit's way, that that's their way of making money, because they're brainwashing you so that in the future you're going to give them money. Why I see it, why can't that be a
That's not most alumni of Reishit.
For those few.
If that again, you could make an argument that that's a long-term plan and make money that way through the alumni, and if you know the numbers, it doesn't add up, number one, and number two, that doesn't make it to any of the Rebbeim. The Rebbeim here don't make money, a whole lot of money. Their salaries are not a lot. They don't, and not every Rebbe stays here long enough that in 20 years.
It's a long-term plan. It's a long-term investment.
Not every Rebbe would stays here long enough.
Yeah.
People move on in life sometimes, for whatever the reason, right? All of the staff here has changed significantly since I was here. There are some that are the same, and there are a lot of staff that are here different.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't. I don't know. To me, it doesn't make sense as a plan. And again, if you know the people, they're not concerned with the money. They're here. They're coming here because they want to make a difference in people's lives, because they care about people, and they realize that this is the most important thing in helping people figure out who they are and what they want to do with their lives now. What they're told to do with their lives.
How would you say that Reishit? What would you say the mahalach then of Reishit would be? Let's try to separate it first with Shana Aleph. Maybe then we'll talk about Shana Bet and then long term. Because we've briefly gone into each of these things. But like, what would you say coming in? What do you think the mahalach is for? What do you think that goal?
So one of the things Reishit does, again, I've been told a lot of other yeshivas do this. I can't speak from personal experience with regards to this point. But Reishit specifically tries to get staff and rebbeim from all sorts of different backgrounds and philosophies, whether it's a Sholem Yeshiv who's more right-wing, or it's a night Rebbe who's more left-wing, or it's a morning share Rebbe who doesn't neatly fit into any box because he kind of chooses, tries to pick the best from everything. Reishit tries to have staff here that can expose the Talmudim to basically every kind of legitimate strand of Judaism, so that whatever is right for that individual kid, he has a possibility of finding someone with that mahalach in life and connecting to it. If this kid connects more with Hasidus, okay, great. There's a Sholem Yeshiv who's more Hasidish.
Do you want to explain what Sholem Yeshiv is?
Sholem Yeshiv is, exactly what the words mean. Ask and answer. He's there in the base Madrich for people to come up and ask questions, and he answers them.
So he doesn't have like a share, basically.
Correct.
He's within the base Madrich, and he's there learning for guys to ask with him. Usually people will end up having a one-on-one chabrusa with him, like they'll learn together, or he'll do like a little chabura, like a group of guys. He'll give share on something, but he's not like a share Rebbe.
Correct.
There's a difference of that's like the structure of thing. But I just realized, like, I'm not getting paid at all to promote Reishit. So if any of you do come to Reishit after hearing this, I like a little stipend. See, everyone has the interest here. I was joking. So that's a lot of what Reishit offers. Is that like there's so much guidance for whatever background you come in, because the guys are coming from such different, like
We have kids coming from more yeshivish background. We have kids coming from modern backgrounds. We have kids coming from parents who are just completely not religious and they didn't even want to send their kids to yeshiva and did because the kid wanted to go because all his friends went or because he knew he wanted to find out what religion was all about. And he managed to convince his parents because most parents, when they see this is something their kids really want, have a hard time saying no.
It's interesting though because when it comes to Shana Bet, there's a very big difference there.
Even with Shana Bet, a lot of parents aren't into it themselves for whatever reason. But very, very often, again, not always, but very often when they see this is something their kid really, really wants, they end up giving in. There are a number of Shana Bet kids here this year who their parents absolutely said no until towards the very end of the summer when they realized their kid it wasn't something that he was just saying he wanted, it was something that he really, really wanted and he wasn't going to get over it. And the parent, okay. It's very hard for a parent who legitimately loves their kid, which any normal, healthy parent does, to refuse something that their kid really, really desperately wants, especially if that thing isn't actually harmful.
Because that's one of the things that they try promote. Like when you go home, even during like the year and stuff like that, they say going home. The most important thing isn't to be sat learning. If you're at the stage where you're learning or listening to Shirim and stuff, most important thing is when your mum asks you to come take down we're getting distracted. When your mum comes and asks you to take out the trash can or whatever, or comes help you to clean up, you drop things instantly. The point of yeshiva is to grow as a person, to grow to know yourself. Yes, of course, you're learning to know Hashem, learning to know God, you're understanding religion, you're understanding what you're doing in life. But like a huge part of it is growing as a person, as being a good person. And like when parents see that, often like that's like the most important thing to be showing to families and stuff. That like you're not. That's also why it's very hard to use the argument of like any normal yeshiva. Well, not any. I'm saying yeshivas that are more in the Kiruv ones. So like Nativ, Reishit, Shraga, all of these that they're boys who are coming from not a crazy learning background and not like a black and white background. A thing that they push is like midas, like your characteristics, working on that. Like yeshiva isn't just learning to read the Gemara and stuff. It's building yourself up as a character. So like when parents see that, that's often what. But like, help me understand why parents would say no to their kids coming back. Do you think them coming back maybe dressing differently? What is like an issue? Do you think what? I don't want to put ideas. I'm saying give your own like thoughts on that.
I haven't spoken to any of these parents. From what I've heard and what I understand, a lot of parents are scared of their kids being brainwashed. A lot of.
Do you think that's a fair?
I think if anyone looks realistically at yeshivas, it's very hard to argue that the kids are getting brainwashed. If you look realistically at Western culture, that's what's doing the brainwashing.
But do you understand that?
The reason they think this is because they know their kid as this, and then 1 year later he comes back with a completely different set of values. Going into yeshiva, he didn't care at all about learning and Judaism, and now he came out learning. He doesn't want to talk to girls anymore until he's getting married. He doesn't want to go to mixed beach anymore. He wants to keep Shabbos. Things like this. Again,
by the way,
some families that's not necessarily a problem.
What you gotta understand though is that like that's a crazy coming from it's a very normal thing to go to a beach for someone to come back, especially after 1 year. It's in my opinion, by the way, it's not so common after 1 year to even say no to the beach. That usually does, especially maybe it is, but
for some kids
I'm saying
some it isn't.
But people see that as a drag because that's a very normal thing. So when you're going against something that's been very normal for your family to do.
Correct, and most of the parents who have at least somewhat bought into Western culture don't realize that their kid was brainwashed up until this point in time, and that they've changed because they've thought for the first time in their life and made decisions on their own. and now this is who they really are, not who other people are molding them into being. The parents don't think about it that way. They think about it as, well, what's the only way for someone to make such a drastic change in who they are from in 1 year? Brainwashing.
But also, they're just saying that it's going back to the thing of they're saying someone going in at point A and point B. They don't see what's happening in between that.
Correct. And they don't realize that brainwashing is not the only way to make a drastic change in life. Getting exposed to ideas and learning to think on your own, and that can make very drastic changes very quickly also, because now you're the one directing your own life. So that's one concern parents have. Another concern is they don't want their kids being more religious than them. Maybe they won't admit this to themselves, but they feel insulted, they feel scared, they feel bad about themselves, they feel guilty, whatever it is. They don't want their kids being more religious. Some parents also feel as if the kid is rejecting them if the kid becomes more religious.
Because I guess it would make sense, like, you're going against what your parents have taught you for 18 years of your life.
Correct.
And it's a very hard idea to feel, even though, like, if you actually look at it, it's not necessarily, it's not at all going against what your parents are teaching you. They made you to the person you are, and now you're taking that next step to start shaping yourself as well, because you'll become, this is a year as well that I've realised, like, I remember my grandparents asked me something, like, what really, like, hit me about going to yeshiva, and I remember thinking to myself, like, this is a year that you're anyways maturing as a person. So are you going to mature as a person in a university or a college where life is partying and being as impulsive as possible and just acting like a child for all the time? Or are you maturing as a person in an environment that you're thinking about who you are, you're actually making life changes, you're instilling values? So that's the person you mature into. So, like, it's nothing about rejecting anything that you've been taught up until now. It's about now that you've been given that, you're using that to mature yourself and grow on as a person. So you're maturing in an environment that is subject to helping you grow.
Correct. A lot of the conversations I have with kids relate to, I just heard of this idea, how do I apply it to my life? Or trying to understand, let's say, what modern orthodoxy's goals and ideals are better, because up until this point in time they just thought it was a watered down form of Judaism. Take the most lenient legitimate opinion, or maybe even less than that, and they want to understand what modern orthodoxy is actually all about, or the yeshivish world, and compare and contrast the pros and cons of both of them. And this way they can make decisions for right now, what they want to do during the year, and what they want to do afterwards. Where do they want to end up in life? You have to understand yourself, and you have to understand the world around you. I haven't, to the best of my knowledge, told anyone do this or do that in all of my many hours of conversations with Avi and with others. I've just explained to the way I view things, the way I look at things, and helped everyone come to their own conclusions as to what they should do in life, and what they want to do, and where they want to go. This is why kids coming out of Reishit, specifically Shana Bed, after 2 years of this, really end up in a variety of different places. Reishit doesn't push, I get asked this a lot, Reishit doesn't push any one place. YU or Landers or Shar Yashiv or Ner Yisrael or whatever else.
Not even secular colleges.
Or even secular colleges, they don't push any one place. Well, most people don't think yeshivas push secular college, so that's why I didn't mention that.
Yeah.
But
so, Reishit
doesn't push away from secular college necessarily. They don't, and I'll explain that in a second. And they don't necessarily push any one yeshiva or yeshiva college environment. They try and help kids figure out what's best for them. In a general sense, it happens to be for kids coming in Shana Aleph and leaving with, especially not coming back Shana Bet. Going to secular college is not the safest environment religiously. After growing up with one set of values for 18 years and then being exposed to new ideas and trained to think for 8-9 months, it's not a full year, it's 8-9 months, and then immediately after going to secular college, which is the most intense place that, generally speaking, that promotes these American ideals, Western culture ideals of not thinking and just pursue whatever you feel, and
it's very much, it's a place of constant
else.
of like instant gratification constantly.
Correct.
Like they also, as a Jew, college campus, that's like the classic thing. Like college campus has become a more toxic place for someone who is looking to have a more.
Correct. So Reishit doesn't push away from secular college per se, but
depending on.
But
very
often for individuals, that's not the safest place to go to remain committed to the values that they learned and came across, in their time here in yeshiva. This is why a lot of kids in Reishit and other yeshivas, pretty much every yeshiva, a lot of kids decide not to go to secular college afterwards. It's their own decision. None of the rabbis force anyone to, apply to IU and, pull out of whatever college they're in.
It's usually after a lot of time thinking about what they want in life. That comes down to like the most like important thing about this is that everything that you're doing is based off thought. Like all the decisions you're making for once in your life and I feel like maybe that wasn't fair to say that for once in your life, because I think depending, like we can't exclude that definitely in Western culture you can, of course you can, like you are in environments where like it is promoted to think, but like because I feel like we bashed Western culture quite a lot. That wasn't like the point. That wasn't like the point of it, but it was more showing that like this year here is the time that you're learning to only, you're here just to think for yourself, not get distracted by other things. Like you don't have college classes or anything else. You just have like this time now to start to learn how to think for yourself, to make your own choices, to make your own values and stuff. And yes, you can Western culture, and I know a lot of people who have become more religious in without having gone to yeshiva, but it's that much harder. This is like, it's shaping in an environment where it's like a constant growth and giving you like clarity. And you have also one thing that's like very important is that how often are you in an environment that you have 20 different people that you can ask different questions, that like personal questions, like you're basically surrounded by 20 different therapists like constantly who you can ask questions, who know stuff, and they don't have a bias for why they're saying what they're saying. They're saying things based on how well they know you. They're looking to get to know you. They're looking to help you out. Like it's so rare to find such a thing where like people are constantly like surrounded to do that. Like
when guys ask me where they should go after Reishit, I don't get paid more for telling them to go to this place instead of that place.
Honestly, imagine how much money you'd be making if you every time you spoke to someone, you told them, like, gave them an idea where to go to get a thing. See, this is where we got to instill Western values back into us. But I was like, this is what I like. I like, I'm joking about like doing all of this, but like you have to understand that there's nothing. No one has any hidden reasons for what they're doing. Like this, because this is the third like part 303. That's why like I wanted to hone in a lot, because like we went through how different experiences you're having in Shana Bet and Shana Aleph. Like you saw with Andy's. Like I assume maybe not everyone's listened to them, but we did the Shana Bet one first, just because like I wanted to see that they're also right at the beginning of their Shana Bet. That's what, like, where they're at in their Shana Bet right now at the beginning, and where they get at in the end of their Shana Bet are going to be two very different places, because that's a whole nother year. Like you're giving yourself the opportunity to even grow within what you like, the foundations that you set. Like a lot of Shana Aleph, if I'm correct, is like it's setting that foundation. You're instilling the values in yourself, and then the Shana Bet, you're actually growing within those values and growing as a person based around those values. So like the person that's why also like I wanted to see the Shana Aleph side right at the beginning, because they're going, as much as people feel like it's a crazy thing, or like how can you be in that kind of environment, they're going to change quite a bit from the start of their Shana Aleph to the end of their Shana Aleph, just because that is what the good thing about Reishit is. Or like yeshiva, sorry.
This is a place that's dedicated towards growth. Like Avi said before, number one, you have a lot of staff around that their only goal is to help you. Me personally, this is my third year as a Madrich. But the reason I came is just because I wanted to help guys grow. I wanted to help connect with guys and help them find what's right for them. Reishit doesn't pay me a whole lot. I'm definitely not doing it for the money. I got my computer science degree. If I wanted money, I could have.
I'm an Israeli tech giant.
I forget Israel. Before I came back to Israel, when I was finishing up, I got an offer to on LinkedIn. I could have been making $70,000 a year or more, and I came here making a lot less than that.
Why
over the course of my 3 years?
So why?
I came here for the sole purpose of helping guys and being there for them, and that's true with all of the Rebbeim here. There's not a single Rebbe that came here for any reason other than helping guys. So that's one thing, as Avi pointed out. Another thing is that this is also a year or 2 years that is dedicated for the Talmudim to grow and think in that way that they've never done before, with no other responsibilities other than towards themselves. Your family is 6,000 miles away. You have no real responsibility.
Unless you're British, please.
Okay, then it's what, 2,000 miles away?
I never know. I assume it's a bit closer.
A bit closer. You have no responsibilities other than keeping in touch with WhatsApp and phone calls and FaceTime and whatever else. That's really the extent of your responsibility towards them. So your family's 6,000 miles away. Your friends, a lot of them from high school went to different yeshivas, and the rest of them are here, right in, with you in this yeshiva, going through the same thing. You have no real responsibilities towards them. You don't have a job, you don't have a family, you're not in college taking classes yet, so you don't have any of those responsibilities yet. This is a year or two that you can dedicate completely towards growing and thinking. For a lot of kids, it's religious growth. For some kids, they come out religiously the same, but they made personal growth. They grew and their character grew. They realized what they want out of life more, and isn't it still something? That's really the main thing, the main value in yeshiva, as opposed to trying to get more religious outside of yeshiva. Back in home, is there's no distractions. This is a place that's dedicated for you to grow on your own. There's nothing else, so there's nothing else to do here. You get bored of going to Ben Yehuda and meeting up with all your same friends and drinking a beer with them. You get bored of that after a little while, and there's only so much basketball you could play a day. There's nothing else to do here other than think and think about who you want to be and where you want your life to go.
Also, it's a place that you're also surrounded by people around you who are growing, like similarly growing, and you're discussing it with people who are like-minded, like as in your friends. You have discussions like ever so often, like it was maybe not as often, like it wasn't that crazy often, but like you would have those discussions of like, do we actually believe in God? Is that like a thing? Like how often do you have like those really deep questions unless like you're high? Like honestly, like if it's not like a normal place to just actually think down and like understand like why you're doing the things that you're doing. It's not.
Life is busy. And Silas Yesharim, which is maybe the most structured guide towards growth as a Jew, literally from the very beginning to the very end. He starts off, the first level he says is Zehiris, which basically there's no one good English word for it, so I'm not going to use any of the translations that the English Silas Yesharim do. Basically what it means is thinking seriously about what you're doing and what your goals in life, and are your actions meeting up with your goals. The Ramchal says the biggest impediment to that, the thing that stops that the most, is just going through life at a frantic, hectic, busy pace without setting aside time to stop and think.
It becomes all on autopilot.
Correct, and life in today's world, technology plays a large part in this. I'm not saying technology is bad, but technology plays a large part of this. Just the way the world is now moves at a crazy fast-paced, crazy fast pace. Life moves, and it moves quickly, and it doesn't give time for people to stop and think. There's a very, very famous Baal Teshuva here in Israel, Rabbi Uri Zohar. He started off as a movie star, involved in all sorts of very usher movies. And I think he was around 40. He started the process of becoming a Baal Teshuva, and he says that the thing that started him along this path was he used to fly a lot for the movies, and back then, this was before they had in-flight entertainment systems. You had to bring your own books or whatever, and he always did. He always brought a lot of books. This one flight he forgot to bring his books. So over the course of the long flight, he was just forced to think a little. For the first time in his life, he said he never stopped and thought about anything before. He'd been going through life on autopilot up until then. Sure, think about this movie or that movie or this car or that car. That's not thinking about life in a deep and serious way. And he was just forced to do that because he had nothing else to do. And that was the start of the process of becoming a Baal Teshuva. That's what yeshiva is. It's a chance to just stop and think for a year, for 2 years. Incidentally, since it's Erev Shabbos today, and over here by us, Shabbos is in like 2 hours. That's what hour and a half. That's what Shabbos is all about. Also, take time to stop. One day a week, and stop and think. The Gemara says that if you take big steps, too big of steps, you lose 1/500th of your sight. But if you look at the Kiddush Cup on Friday night, it restores that sight. So the Maral, who is a genius at explaining these kind of Gemaras, says, what in the world's going on here? You lose 1/500th of your sight if you take a big step. How does that work? Scientifically speaking, that doesn't seem accurate, and then you get it back if you look at the Kiddush Cup. That's definitely not scientifically accurate. So what's going on? So the Maral says the Gemara is not talking literally. It's trying to convey this very idea that if you take big steps in life, you're moving quickly without stopping, without pausing at all, ever, then you lose a little bit of your sight. You don't see clearly what your goals are and what you're doing in life anymore and where you want to go. You just stop thinking, you're going on autopilot, and that means you're letting your instincts and other people determine really all the important things in life. But then Shabbos comes, and you look at the Kiddush Cup. That's what Kiddush is all about. You're saying Hashem made the world and made it for a purpose. That's what Shabbos is all about. And let me think about what that purpose is. And am I meeting that purpose? That's what Shabbos is all about, and that's what Kiddush comes to remind us.
Wow.
Marl's beautiful explanation of that crazy Gemara.
Now that we're on this topic, please, Gemara. I just want to delve into it a little bit, because coming in, most people haven't really learned Gemara. They've looked into it a little bit. They for the schools that had Gemara classes and stuff like that, yeah, they have some understanding of it, but there are like crazy things within Gemara. It's like how do we actually understand them within this day and age? Like, for example, a lot of the things don't seem applicable at all in this day and age. Give some insight into like what Gemara.
So there are a lot of different parts to this question. We'll start off broadly speaking. There are two categories of things in the Gemara. There's the halacha and then there's the agada. The agada, some people translate it as stories or legends or myths or whatever. None of those are accurate translations. There's no one word that to translate agadata into. It's best defined as not halacha. It's everything else. That section I'll speak about in half a second. Yeah, halacha is the laws. So when you're learning the laws of what happens when an ox gores a cow, so you have the question of how is this applicable to my life, and that, I mean, it matches up with the world as we know it. It's just none of us, generally speaking, own cows or oxes, and it's not a common occurrence. So what's the relevance there is the primary question, and there are two answers to that. To properly explain this requires a whole lot more time, but I'll give the abbreviated version. The first answer to this question is that learning is a goal in and of itself. Without getting into how, learning Torah connects you to HaKadosh Baruch Hu more than anything else. It's just what it is. And the goal of life is connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So
isn't that like the start of Messiah Shalom?
That's the start of Messiah Shalom. It's the Ramban at the end of Parshas Bo. They just say it in different ways. This is everyone.
Briefly, just because the whole point of this shmooze is that we are trying to understand these things. I know you don't. You said it's a whole talk within itself, but just briefly, why is learning the key to like cleaving to Hashem and getting close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu?
Because he's not physical, how are you supposed to get close to him? Right now, I am sitting in close physical proximity to Avi.
Not to smell me. It's not good.
You can't really do that with God. Yes, he's everywhere, but he's also nowhere because he's beyond space and time. And if that didn't blow your mind, you didn't think deeply enough about it. Or you were already exposed to that idea. One of the two. The only way to get close to him is understanding what he wants, what his will is, his knowledge. The Rambam in the very beginning of Hilchos Yisodei Torah, the very beginning of the 14-volume Magnum Opus Compendium of all of Halacha, that is the Rambam. The very second thing he talks about. First thing is how God is the only real existence. The second one is that God is one unified being. We say it every day, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. What does that mean, Echad? That he's one. It doesn't just mean he's the only God. On a much deeper level, it means he is one unified being. We are composed of a lot of different parts. On a physical sense, that's very, very clear. Atoms, electrons, molecules, cells, arm, hand, leg, right? Very, very clear physically, but also you are composed of what you remember and what you want and what you're doing, right? There's a lot of different aspects to you. The Rambam says this isn't true with God. He is one completely unified being. The Ramchal talks about this in Derek Hashem. My understanding is that Kabbalah focuses a lot on that, but I don't know Kabbalah. So we can't properly understand this. We could just say he's not different things, right? He is not, his will and him are not separate. That's what the Rambam says. We can't understand what it means that they're the same, but we can say and we can understand that they're not separate. So when you're learning his will, that is him, right? In short, that's why learning Torah gets you closer to God than anything else. So that's answer number one, why it's relevant learning about why an ox scores a cow. Even
Just because
the act in and of itself, even though it has no relevance to your life, the act in itself brings you closer to God than anything else.
You never know. What if my ox scored?
Okay, thank you, Avi. When you buy an ox, then
I'll let you know.
Yeah. Answer number two is that the Gemara is the compendium of all of Torah Shabbal Peh, an infinite branch of wisdom, the oral law, right? The Gemara in code basically has all of God's will that if you extract from that, you can apply it to any principle. You can apply the principle learned to any case in life. This is what the rabbis do. They don't make up halakha. The great wisdom of any generation. They are.
I apologize.
No. They are.
Sorry, we are having technical difficulties over there. Is there something we can apologize. You want to say hi to the podcast?
What is this?
This is a podcast with a video. I mean, for the listeners, we have a special guest. Rav Sender Gross has come to join us.
Wow.
We're delving into the deeper insights behind why we learn Gemara.
We're currently using Rav Sender's office.
So yeah, we are using Rav Sender's office.
We're really the intruders.
Now, if you can hear, there is Rav Sender's baby trying to say hi. Does she want to join in the topic?
Next time.
Next time. Okay,
so, in short, the rabbis don't make up halakha, right? There's the phrase when there's a rabbinic will, there's a way is apikursis. The rabbis of each generation, the great rabbis, you have to be a master of the entire oral law to do this. Not every rabbi is created equal. Just like not every doctor is created equal. You wouldn't trust your general practitioner to perform complicated brain surgery, right? So not every rabbi is created equal either. In order to decide certain things, you have to have a vast command of the oral law. But this is, in short, why we learn Gemara, because learning what happens when an ox scores a cow, you learn important principles from that. That can then be applied to modern day society. When there's a car crash, how do you know who's at fault? Things like that. You know what I mean? Okay, that's halakha.
Yeah, and just also on like a more basic level with less like curry so behind it, but like just the fact that you're learning to question things like within other religions.
That's an important part of what we were saying this whole time, that yeshiva doesn't brainwash you. People are learning to think on their own.
Yeah, and you're literally your whole day is spent arguing. You're trying to work things out. You're trying to understand what someone's trying to explain within the Gemara. Like
you don't accept anything just because it was said. You
learn it for yourself.
You don't accept it until you understand it. Basically.
But like you see with other religions, with Christianity, you can't ask questions, for example. And if you actually delve into my friend, he in Landers, he's got a book at the moment that he's been writing, just going through different religions and finding that to put it like to a basic level, if there's a contradiction within the text of a religion, it's got to be man-made, because if there's something that's a fault within the text that can't be put back together, like really, like there's a fault within the religion, and you can clearly say that religion is false. Within Judaism, whenever we have something that might seem like a difficulty and might seem to contradict it, the Gemara usually asks it, and not only that, like there's always going to be an answer. You
just have to look hard enough.
Exactly. You have to.
Answers.
There's always people who understand it and are willing and can explain it. But there's also sometimes that we may not be at the level that we do understand certain things. So we've got to get to a higher level. So
Correct. Some of the answers were built off of a lot of prior knowledge needed, and you have to get that knowledge.
I mean that's because that was usually through Torah Shabbat Peh. That's how they.
Correct, and some of it, was very subtle distinctions made by someone who spent their entire life trying to figure this out, and you're not going to understand it after reading it once, half paying attention.
Yeah.
You have to give it enough thought, but there's an answer to everything.
And you said so going back to that was the first thing with halacha. Yes, halacha.
So going back to Agadata. So Agadata, the point of Agadata, it includes stories, some of which are meant to be taken literally, some of which are not. The general rule behind that, according to most, is the more crazy and fantastical it seems, the bigger chance it's meant to be taken as a metaphor. The rabbis weren't stupid. But it consists of stories, some of which are meant to be taken literally, some of which are not. It consists of sayings and teachings on a moral level, and it consists of things like that. There's actually a great book I just bought. It's out of print though. It's $100 on Amazon. I went to the publishers here in Madrich, about a 20-minute bus ride, and got it for 80 shekel.
That's the Jewish way of living. When there's a discount, you find it.
I don't have $100 to spend on Amazon. It's a great book though. It's called Agada Sages, Stories and Secrets or something like that, from Rabbi Emanuel Bernstein. I'm a big fan of him.
Was it in a chag or just in some book?
It's a book about Agada.
Definitely read his his Pesach Haggadah. Literally changed my understanding of the. Are you looking for something we can help with? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Anyways,
joined by Rob Sender again.
So Rabbi Emanuel Bernstein wrote a number of things. One of them is it's a great book about Agaditas. So he has a whole thing in the introduction about how to relate to Agaditas before he starts explaining some of the more difficult ones, which is what the book's all about. Anyways, so he has a great presentation of it there, but so there are a number of different approaches as to how to relate to Agaditas. Some of them seem to contradict modern science, for example. For that, there's a number of approaches too. Some say the world's changed since then. Some say that the Gemara was going based off of the science in its times, and they were incorrect. And some say the science of our times is incorrect. Feel free to use whichever approach makes you more comfortable. I don't pretend that to know which one's best, basically. Sometimes this one, sometimes that one is probably the correct. No one approach is always right in these kind of things. Anyways, so it depends on what the problem with the Agada depends on what your approach is. So the ones that don't match up with modern science, you have to take one of those approaches, basically. Now the Ramchal says, and I think the Maharal also says, that in the Agada, Chazal didn't really care about the science. They weren't writing a science book. The Agadas are meant to teach you moral, ethical lessons about what you're supposed to think and how you're supposed to perceive things and how you're supposed to feel.
Do you not think then that can
relate to God?
Do you not think then that can cause issues of Kofarism sort of?
Well, let me finish.
I'm sorry.
So the halacha tells you what to do. The Agada tells you why you're doing it, and at least a little bit of why you're doing it and how it's supposed to be meaningful to you. So Chazal, they didn't really care about the science of it. That's not their goal, according to the Ramchal and others. Their goal was just to convey these messages in a way that could be understood by people. So they put it down in terms of the science of their times, not because they necessarily thought it was correct. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, but because that's what people of the time knew and understood. So,
but even within that, you see there's so many things of people understanding. We have joined again. Sender. Even within that, you sorry, the intrusions. It's okay. we are technically in his office, so there are, what were we saying? There are, if you go back and, once again, my friend's book is the perfect place to reference because he's got all the Mara Makonis, all the different places where you can find it, of people back way before, like for example, knowing that the world was round, like how many Rabbanim already great.
Correct. So
the writers were talking about that, and how many stars there were in the sky.
Correct. So there are a lot of places. There are a lot of places in the Gemara where they very clearly had an advanced understanding of science.
But sometimes you're saying that they didn't.
So the times when is what they said doesn't match up with modern science. So again, that leads to a few different approaches. One is God gave them special understanding of science in certain areas that was needed for halacha or for whatever reason, and in everything else they were allowed to and supposed to rely on the science of their times, and that was incorrect.
It's the same way that nowadays the science that we think might be correct in 20 years time or 50 years time.
Correct. Science is always developing and understanding better. Another approach is Chazal really got the science right, and modern science just hasn't caught up. Back then they said things that seemed absolutely crazy, and they said it didn't match up with modern science, but nowadays modern science proves it true. If you want another book about this, I'm in the middle of reading. It's not an easy read, but it's all great. Torah and Reason from Reb Chaim Zimmerman, genius who came. He was a teenager during World War II. Came over to America right before. Genius. Anyways, so he has a few chapters about this idea. There are other books also. I just haven't read those personally. I've just seen them, so I can't recommend them. Anyways, so that's so modern science is the one catching up. That's another approach. Another approach is the world's changed. There's a comment in the Gemara about how the world's basically been slowly dying since the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. So based off of that, so there are some who want to say that the world's continuously changing even more. Very often that's been scientifically proven not true, historically proven not true, but who knows? Maybe in some specific cases that is the answer. Either way. So Chazal, whether they knew the science correct or not, sometimes they very clearly did. They gave the average of the lunar month, the amount of time it takes for the moon to make one rotation, which modern science couldn't figure out until a few years ago with atomic clocks and lasers and satellites and stuff like that. But it's straight out in the Gemara. There's a little bit of a decimal point difference, and Chazal, they were never that precise, that number of decimals off, because that's something only computers care about, not people. Anyways, so that's a few approaches to making sense of a God. It does that.
Do you also find though then, well, yes, I 100% agree, because we're talking about the people now behind it, saying only people care rather than computers, but
no.
Surely if we're going, only
computers care.
Yeah,
well, it's like this.
But I'm saying,
humans can't tell the difference when we're talking about.
But surely then that feels like then it's coming more from the human, learning the Gemara then is we're talking about other humans rather than it coming straight from Hashem. If we think things may not be specific to the decimal point.
The Torah was given for humans in the world as we perceive it. This idea was also developed very brilliantly and beautifully by Reb Chaim Zimmerman, although I've seen it in other places also. I can't remember offhand where. The Torah was given to man in man's world as we perceive it. The Torah, God obviously knows the decimal points all the way down, but since we're talking about the fractions that we can't see on our own, we don't need microscopes to fulfill the Torah. We didn't have it, 3,000 years ago when the Torah was given. We don't, the Torah was given to be fulfilled at all times and all circumstances, not, only in, 3,000 years when you get microscopes and atomic clocks and whatever. So the Torah was given in a way that it's usable to man-sized measurements, man-sized everything. again, if you want more about it's all chapter in Chaim Zimmerman's book, Torah and Reason. I think it's like 15 books on Amazon. I think it's out of print, but it's like 15 bucks on Amazon. Well worth the read if you can sit down and think, because you're not going to get it if you don't sit down and think.
By the way, I can tell you there's also a limit on how many shout-outs of books you can do on this podcast.
Oh, well, too bad.
Well over them.
I'm going to shout out whatever I need.
Eitan actually runs this podcast, by the way. This is his podcast now. It's now Shmoozing with Eitan. I'm simply the guest here.
But again, I'm Avi's Madrich. He doesn't.
Exactly. He
tell
tells me what to do. But as much as I am enjoying your Torah, like it's Geschmack, it's already 5:09 our time, and Shabbos comes in at 6:05.
True. This has also been running for almost an hour and a half.
Almost an hour and a half. We are, just by the way, we are definitely doing this again. Even if the people don't want it, I want it.
You just gotta come back to Israel for that. I'm not coming to America.
We'll see.
Unless you fly me in for a wedding.
But it's not Hashem, you know. Well, it's fine. Alex Fachler's wedding is in a couple of weeks. So, but I guess that's in London. Yeah.
Oh, Fachler's wedding's in.
Fachler's wedding is in. That is a shout out for Alex Fachler's wedding in a couple of weeks.
Oh, that's original. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be there.
You're not gonna be there?
Probably not. I'm not. It's in London.
Well, got a place to stay. Got my house.
Appreciate it.
All right. So we're just we got slightly distracted, but in a good way, just because it's good. What we've basically proven from today is just the whole thing of coming in at one thing and coming out another thing isn't just baseless brainwashing. We're giving, everything has its reasons. Everyone's doing something proactive. It's not, if you're coming to yeshiva, it's very rarely, unless you've gone to like a really wrong place for you, it's very rarely a negative thing if it's done correctly. Once again, depends. Everyone's human. There's mistakes that even Rebbeim can make, and there's mistakes that kids can make with it, and it's how you use your time here. But at the end of the day, usually it is very nice, by the way. Usually it is a good, stable place to be, and it's when someone's coming back a different person, it's not a threat to you. It's simply they themselves have found out more about themselves and worked through who they are. So I think we're gonna end here. Do you have any other things you want to add?
Just want to wish everyone a good Shabbos and a Slachar Rabin, whatever you do in life.
That's beautiful. I think this is going to be... Thank you. It's fine, I'm going to see it now. So, yeah, this is the conclusion. I hope maybe, I'm thinking maybe we'll go... the person who I was talking about who's writing the book, I'm going to be near to get them on the podcast, because that's going to be like a very, very interesting podcast. He's done like a lot of research into just proving God's existence. So maybe I'll make that another series. I'll be honest, when I started the first episode, I wasn't planning it to be a series. It sort of just happened, but that's the way it's going to happen. I also planned to do other interviews first and other episodes first, and then release this, but I think I'm going to end up releasing this first. So contrary to what I said at the beginning of my first podcast, this is going to be the first series that I post. So I literally, firstly, thank you very much. I very much appreciate it. It's very, you got to understand, being in yeshiva for 2 years and having a madrich that you're close, like this, I jokingly say that he's my Rebbe, but it's so much more than a Rebbe. It's someone you have to rely on, someone that you can talk to. He knows, you probably know me better than I would say anyone else. Your madrechim invest so much within you, and I forget that the ikka of this podcast technically was the madrich side of it. So just quickly going back to it. So we've got 2 more minutes that we can squeeze in. They invest so much time in you. They get to know you. They become it's also how you use them. But they're there to be able to help you. They're there to help you. Even though yes, they're getting you up in the morning, and we had crazy stories of I had someone called Rochlin, Jacob Rochlin, big shout out. He'd come in blaring music, singing, waking you up. We had other people who'd pull out the pinno from you.
From this year comes in blasting Arabic music.
Okay, there you go. Right, you get also you have very different madrechim based on also who comes back, whoever. But the Madrichim are such a crucial part of a yeshiva running because they're there usually 24/7. Like within it, they go away and do their own things, but like they're there for you the whole time, and they're usually who you make the connections with most if you actually like put the work into it, and like it's the foundation for everything you're doing because they're usually older guys who already have the values instilled in them, and you learn from them, you pick up from them, and like I literally I say this every time I come here, and every time I speak to anyone, I always say, if it wasn't for you, like I would be a different person. Like I've had a different mahalach, and there's so many questions that you can talk out and get to know yourself just by schmoozing with the right person. Baruch Hashem, Eitan Adler is the right person. Harav Hagoyin Eitan Adler, as we like to call him. But yeah, it's.
No, I don't have smicha.
It's fine. We give him smicha. As you know, we do have the power for smicha here in Reishit Yerushalayim.
Yes.
But yeah, so I apologize. We didn't go so much into Eitan's. Like we kind of jumped around a little bit. Like we dealt on it a little bit, and then we didn't really. And we never ended up going back onto what you do so much here.
I think they got that for the most part.
Yeah,
I spend hours and hours and hours and hours schmoozing and
just get the hours and hours.
All sorts of things with all sorts of guys.
Yeah.
Torah questions, life questions, all hours of the day, all sorts of topics.
In all time zones as well. Very many different time zones.
If over the last 2.5 years, I can't think of very many topics that haven't been discussed, and or any time of day that hasn't been utilized for those conversations.
You for sure done an all-nighter.
I've done several all-nighters.
Yeah. Right.
More than several.
But that's what it just is incredible because what other place can you do that? Like you just do all-nighters, just getting to know yourself, like, and having people who are like so willing. Like there's very rarely a time unless you'll be beyond shattered that you're not willing to talk to someone, or like we'll make the time later on to talk to them. Like it just
basically
go Madrich, yeah. If any donors want to fund Eitan this year, just let us know. Make deploys. Eitan, you want to tell them where you are this year?
This is my long-term plan. I'm brainwashing everyone to get money through this podcast.
I'm telling you, he's been setting me up to do this podcast the whole time. But yeah, Eitan, we didn't really mention that Eitan is, while just starting this year, while still doing Madrich duties, he's also in the Mir, so he's commuting every single day to the Mir from Beit Shemesh. So it's like an hour and a bit journey, just under an hour.
Just under an hour.
Yeah, every single morning, and then coming back after he's finished. So he is definitely throwing back and forth. So it's harder. We didn't really delve into the Shana Aleph, Shana Bet, like connections and how it's different, but I feel like we gave a good outset, and maybe we'll do this another time, and we'll I think this is a good time to end it. I guess, even though when I release this probably won't be Shabbos, all before Shabbos. I guess from us, we're wishing you a very good Shabbos. I hope you have enjoyed this podcast. Oh yeah, very big thing. I have not plugged at all. I've never subscribe. I guess subscribe. I don't know, follow. All the things that you should be doing. Eitan, you're definitely blocking in all of this. And yeah, if you actually want to get in contact with me to come on the podcast, because I know everyone's dying to come on this podcast, I have an email that is shmoozingwithavi@gmail.com. Yeah, see, we're very professional here. We've got emails and everything. So yeah, if you want to come on here, please let me know. Talk about anything that you want to schmooze about, I guess. God related, not God related, I don't know, life in general.
You need a therapy session.
Exactly.
On the podcast.
Exactly. Anything that you want, let me know. And yeah, I hope you have enjoyed this hour 34 minute podcast. Have a good Shabbos.